So today we have Tara Hunter. I'm sorry,
Tara September.
Sorry, Tara September. Sorry, Tara. She is an award-winning contemporary romance author and Amazon bestseller. Besides romance writing, Tara is also a social media maven and former communications and PR manager for WWE, Disney. I'm a big fan of Disney, General Motors, Pepsi. I'm a big fan of Coke, and more. She is a recipient of numerous awards, including the PR News Platinum Award for Best Video Program and a Public Relations Society of America winner for Best One-Time Media or Special Event. She holds a master's degree in journalism and communication from New York University and majored in English for her BA at Wheaton College, Massachusetts. She now lives in Southwest Florida with her husband, twin boys, and 4 cats. She outnumbers us by 1. Beth and I have 3 cats. We are those crazy cat people that have more cats than humans. And she is president of the Southwest Florida Fiction Writers Group. So I'll say that again, president of the Southwest Florida Writers Group. And if you like what she has to say, reach out to them, and she, like I say, she'll be able to get you in the right direction for writing. So let's go on. And Tara, the floor is all yours. I'm going to turn my spotlight off here. And where is that?
All right. Hello. I am hitting the share screen button. And
There you go.
I'll put it in slideshow so you don't see all my notes. All right, great. Can you see the screen and me still?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
All right, wonderful. Well, thank you for having me. Whether you're a writer or interested in writing, I was just going to be sharing how easy it is for me through becoming an author thanks to Apple. And I'll discuss the differences and my career path. So I'm used to speaking to groups, but not so much focused on me. So this will be interesting, or talking about Mac specifics. So bear with me, and hopefully we can get some good information for you guys. So yes, my background, I've always been love writing. It was always therapeutic for me, self-care, journaling, and so I went for my master's in journalism. I also wrote for the Huffington Post for 8 years, and a lot of Greenwich Time newspaper in Connecticut, and this one in Queens. But for that, I used to always get assigned something, and I had to cover things I really didn't want to write about. I once day came home after doing a hit and run story where I was the one that got the cover story because I spoke to the grieving parents. And it was something I never really wanted to do again. So everyone was like, yeah, you got the cover, but that's not the kind of writing I wanted to do. I wanted more escapism. And that is what I write. So I write romance. I write, not 50 Shades of Grey romance or anything like that. It's more like romantic comedies with some steamy bits, I guess, for some, and some are sweet. So I now have, I'll tell you the process of getting there. So I'll back up. So as a journalist, I knew how to write, without sharing your opinion. So when I was leaving Disney and I was done with the PR world, I had my kids, I attended a conference, and they said, do you have any regrets? And I was kind of cocky in my head. I'm like, no, I have no regrets. Anything I wanted, I went and got. Then on my drive home, because it was over in Miami, coming back over Alligator Alley, in my head, I heard, liar, you've always wanted to write a book. So, it's now or never, let's do this. So in between, my kids, my twin boys, identical twin boys, were 2. I'm up all night anyway, so might as well write. So I started doing that. And it was nice to have that kind of pursuit again, because I was still doing some freelance things, but this again was all something that I was passionate about writing. But this is when I learned I had a lot of comeuppance. Fiction writing was very different. I was doing things that you weren't supposed to do, head hopping and all this. So I started taking a lot more courses, joining groups like what you guys have here, but romance writers, fiction writers groups, and pretty much getting my manuscript beat up. And after 2 years of that, which feels great, I still kept going. And I finally, I had a good editor to take a look at, I paid for editing because I was not published yet, to go through and work all the different issues out. And then I had a developmental editor, which is the one that finds like, you can't go from plot B, plot A without connecting some dots. So that's the things I had to work on. So when people ask me, how long does it take you to write a book? It took me 3 months to write it, and then it took 4 years of editing it and getting it where it should be. So that's the actual answer. But now it's way easier now that I know what to do. So I finally got it into a good position. I started entering a lot of contests, and I was winning them. I was winning, or at least getting finalists, and I was getting all that approval. And now it was the part of pitching it to agents and editors. So this is how traditional, if you want to be traditionally published, that is what you had to do. So I would write the synopsis, answer all their questions, and then hold my breath and wait to see if they're interested and to come back to me. So I finally got to this point in Orlando. There was this big editors looking for content for different publishing houses. And I got a 15-minute interview. So I'm excited. I go up to Orlando. It's a huge ballroom, a line out the door of hundreds of people like me wanting to get their book published. And it was all genres. But I was meeting with the editor that would specifically write women's fiction and romance. So I'm in her line and I'm practicing, and there's like a big clock on the wall. There's like a bouncer there saying, you're next, you're next. It was very intimidating. And you sit there, and I was prepared. I had all the, how does your heroine develop? How does, there's this term called, what is the black moment? And it's what is the part where the characters might not be together? Like, what is keeping them apart? The conflict. So I had all this stuff ready. My book was Jesse's Girl. So I said it's based on the song Jesse's Girl, a small town romance, so it kind of tells you right away what it's about. If you're familiar with the song, it's a love triangle. So I was hitting it. She seemed interested. And at the very end, they'll say, we would like to read the first chapter, if that's what you're hoping for, or this is not a fit for us, try this place. And then, yeah, good luck. Then they said, I would like to see the whole manuscript. So very excited, left that there, went to the hotel bar, drank a lot. So this was going to be my path. I wanted to be traditionally published. Now that they have my manuscript, they get 3 months right to refusal. So for 3 months, I can't send it to anywhere. I can't do anything with it. I'm just sitting there twiddling my thumbs. They literally waited to like the last week was to get back to me. And they kind of, pardon my language, I call it a shit sandwich. Okay, they gave you the good part, then what they didn't like, but like that. So they liked my story, they're interested, here are the things we'd like to change. And if you can get it back to us, we would like to pursue this path. So now the changes, okay, fine. They say, can the hero be a doctor? Because medical romances are bigger than, and he was a lawyer. I'm like, okay, there's a part where, he gives her legal advice. So I guess he'll recommend a friend or something. So a lot of little things. Yeah, no problem. I get that. I can't pretend it's my baby, even though it feels like that. You got to edit it and you got to change. But then they wanted her to be pining for her ex. Now, the heroine was a very weak character to begin with. And she grows, so it's really awesome. In the first chapter, her ex leaves her, takes the money, and is with a younger woman. So if she's still pining for him, I would really hate her. And I would think my readers would hate her. So I'm all in my head thinking, how am I going to say no? This is, oh, I didn't tell you, the publishing house was Simon & Schuster. So this would be a huge deal. So do I argue? I'm a nobody author at this point. How do I, figure this out? And then I have a friend, Farah Rashan. She writes African-American romance stories and now is writing for Disney. So it all came around. She's doing like alternate stories, like an alternate story of Princess and the Frog, Tiana's story. Anyway, she was traditionally published. She has 40 books out, and she started doing self-publishing until right now with Disney for the last 10 of her books, because she said it wasn't worth, she couldn't afford to write for Harlequin. I love how she said that. And I was like, whoa, because of all the little bit you make and what they make and all that, it just didn't make sense. So when you, here. So that's called self-publishing versus indie, right? So here's traditional versus indie publishing. So when you publish it yourself, you have all the control. You get more of the royalties. Amazon takes a huge cut still, but you're not splitting it still further. But everything's on you, the cover. So if you're a good graphic designer like Cheetah, I think you said you do, then
Yes.
you're golden. But if not, so I have to hire a cover artist. I have to get my own editing editors and all this stuff. So a lot more falls on you. However, there is the wrong idea that when you're traditionally published, they're going to give you all this PR. They're going to give you the press release, do all that, and they don't. So when Farah first started writing, I was her publicist. Not that I knew about book media. I knew how to do press releases and all that based on my public relations background. And I did help her, and I got her a few mentions. But even that blew my mind, that here she is in Barnes & Noble, physical books and everywhere, and they don't help. They don't do anything. They just give it out to regular people. So I was like, well, if that's going to be the case anyway, and I'm not loving the changes about what Simon & Schuster is saying, do I take her route or do I do my way? Do I do it my own? I do have a marketing background. I feel like I could do all this. And I think the alpha and the control freak in me was kind of wanting to have it all this way. But I've learned it's a lot. It's a lot. I bit off a lot more than I can chew. So anyway, as I was writing my own shit sandwich back to Simon & Schuster, they write back to me the next day, sorry, our imprint went under. So that really made the decision easier. So there went the section that my book would have went into, just went under. So that has been, as Dan probably knows, the traditionally published world is getting smaller and smaller and smaller. And it's because of blogs and social media and self-published indie authors like me, because we're realizing we could do this on our own. What are you offering us? You're not even offering us the PR. Some of them you get that automatic exposure. So I did have to work for every reader I got. But where Farah, when she started, her book was presented to a bunch of people ready to read her work. So that is the difference. So now I realize, okay, I'm going to do self-publishing. And this is when I went from being a PC girl to a Mac, because everything I looked at showed how much easier it would be. And I fought it throughout journalism, because a lot of we had to use Quark and to set the papers and everything. It was always a Mac at the office, but I still didn't love it back then. But it was, the old big kind anyway. So every software that made it so much easier, and I tried the PC versions, everything was on Apple. So, okay, so that Christmas, I got my iMac, I got a MacBook, and I'll explain why, what software that is to begin with. So this was in 2017, I published Jesse's Girl, and it did well. It got a lot of awards, but it didn't bring in a lot of money, and it didn't bring in a lot of readers. And that's when I learned, this is the more depressing part, wasn't it good enough I wrote a book and it did well? No, I found out your next book sells your last book. So it's not good enough to be one book, right? One book, you need several. And a backlist is what they called. So I realized this is now going to be a career for me, and that is the path I started to take. So just last week, I have 3 print books published, 5 audiobooks, and they're all on ebook too, and then 2 additional just ebook only because they're too small. It's a novella. And I just think, who's going to want to read that thin little paper and me to pay for the printing costs and things like that. So as an indie if you can be a self-published author is usually what we consider a one-off person who wants to write a story about their life, their crazy aunt, and they have an interesting story to tell. And they want to share this with future generations or just do this as a therapeutic means of journaling, right? That's what more just the self-publishing author is considered. An indie author is when you're going to have more than just that, when you're going to have several memoirs or several books or things like that. So that's the difference. I am now a hybrid author, which means I do have one story that's in an anthology that's traditionally published, but it all came from me first, self-publishing and putting it out there, not going to be at the mercy of editors and what they're telling me to write, because that is what I didn't like about being a journalist to begin with. I didn't like being assigned a certain topic that wasn't I'm going to be passionate about. So that was pretty much the decision for me. And now, so last week I had that ebook come out, and now I can say I'm a Barnes and Noble bestseller as well. So I'll have to update that. And on Thursday, tomorrow, the USA Today list comes out. I don't know if I'll be on it, but we'll see. This has been a real push because I've learned with each release, and we had over 5,000 books sold so far in the first week.
Tara,
Big deal. Yes.
question for you. Dan, can you unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yeah, I was curious how you get them self-published.
Okay.
I mean, sorry, self-printed, sorry.
Yes.
Oh, going from, a blog and electronic,
Right.
what do you do?
Correct. So you can write in anywhere you want, Word, whatever one you're comfortable with. And then let's skip ahead for a second. I used Vellum. So this is the reason that it's only on Mac. Vellum makes it easier. So now you transfer your doc or PDF or whatever you have to this brilliant, easy to use software. And it literally also pulls, it even knows which is your chapters. Once or twice I had to change, something got put to the wrong page and didn't realize. It formats it and makes it beautiful. You can do all these other features, add the W like that as big. And then at the end you hit generate. And it's going to give you an EPUB file. Mm-hmm. A Mobi, which is for Kindle, which they're now actually going to EPUB as well. A PDF, and the PDF is what you use for the print. It'll tell you how many pages you can set if you wanted a 5x8, a bigger size. You set it, tell the program, it gives you the files. Now, from the files that I create an account on Amazon, I create an account on Barnes and Noble, Apple Books, and I just push those files up there. For the print version, I use Amazon and Barnes and Noble only. So Apple Books does not do a print version, but it has my audiobooks on there.
So do they print on demand then? Is that how that works?
Yes, it prints on demand. Usually it seems like with your next release, they kind of see how many bought your last. So in the beginning, there's never people waiting too long, it seems. It feels like they might have at least 50 ready to go, and then bigger, because my last one, I had like several hundred pre-orders, so that even tells them that. But print, okay, so the charge is more, right? So my books sell for $8.99 on print. I actually make less selling print than my $2.99 ebooks because of the cost that Amazon charges or Barnes and Noble charges to publish and print. So I do think if
someone wanted to support an author, should they buy the ebook?
Yes. which is counterintuitive, right? You
Right.
think you're helping them buying. I bought your physical book and it's sitting on
Mhm.
my bookshelf, but that part always looks nice. I totally geek out over seeing that. And then I buy a bunch myself to go to events and signings. So I do always have to have that because when you're there, so many people do want to walk away with something. It's not like download.
Right.
So I learned that I make the most with audiobooks. That's the big-ish share. But
And
what
do they
people,
have someone that reads the book then? Is that how?
yes, it's not this voice, don't worry. I auditioned different narrators. In the beginning, I settled for what I could afford, and with each one, I've gotten more and more quality. But they've all been really great voice actors, and the people don't realize is the narrator. I get 20%, and she gets 20%. Even though she's just reading my words, I wrote it. But they bring the production, they do the files, like you having that awesome microphone. I wouldn't even have any of that. They have a studio and they handle all that. So they make just as much. For one of them though, I paid outright, so now I get the 40%. You just have to see what makes sense. Yeah, these are all things I had no idea. I just wanted to write a story. I wanted to be a romance author, and now I'm romance author, marketer, and everything. It's just there's so much more. So even though self-publishing makes it super easy to do, if you want this as a career and not just as a hobby, there's a lot that goes into it, but I kind of find it all fun.
Great.
So publishing to Apple Books is really easy. It is just pretty much your iTunes account. However, I created a different one because my original iTunes name was like something I had in college. So like I wasn't gonna go by that. So I did create a separate one. You always have to have your W-9 and that kind of information for taxes, but it's seamless. They directly transfer the money at the end of each month, things like that, right to my account. And then at the end of the year, I get, the statement that I have to give to my accountant for taxes. But what is really cool about Apple Books, so it used to be, it's changed, it's officially Apple Books now. For a while, it was iBooks. So they're Apple Books. I like it when I'm out and somebody goes, "Oh, I would like to get yours." And they're like, "Oh, I don't need," and some people say, "I don't have an e-reader. I don't have a Nook or a Kindle." I go, "Oh, you're from your phone. You go to that books app, they type in my name, boom, and it's so easy. They just buy it like that. And it's just like an app charge." So, because I'll have people say, "Well, I don't have an account with iBooks, I mean, Apple Books or anything." I'm like, you don't need it. You just, if you have an iPhone, that is easy. So I've gotten myself some quick sales that way, kind of bullying people to hit, put my name in and boom, quickly download that. So I'm actually been liking how Apple Books has evolved. In the beginning, I didn't have any of my books, only the audiobooks on there. Because I used to think, who's going to read on that? But with the iPad and everything, the only and they don't have a web browser to read, but they have the app on your computer too. So now I've done that. So if I'm traveling, and on the plane, I read from the bigger screen on my laptop on Apple Books. So even though they're making it easy and they're making it cool, they don't do the print, and they're still, from this stat, they're only 5% of the market share. So even though Amazon takes a lot of money and they're a pain and their algorithm, and they lost 50 pre-orders that I had. So I had and it's not like I know who those people were to say, "Hey, could you reorder?" They randomly put me in different categories that my book has nothing to do with. This recent one that says Kiss and Tell, it has a graph background because they're in college, science. The AI of Amazon kept putting me in the engineering category, even though I clearly didn't list it, and I had an email back. So actually I was an Amazon #1 bestseller in engineering, but I can't really go and quote that. but people do that. People will put obscure categories just to be the number one. So whenever you see someone say a number one Amazon bestseller, maybe be a little skeptical if they're not John Grisham and Nora Roberts and things like that. So I am an Amazon bestseller, but number one is only probably if they were in a very obscure category.
I see you have The Martian there.
Yeah.
I think that's a fascinating story because that was originally, for those that don't know, The Martian with Matt Damon. Ridley Scott directed it. Great movie. Started out as a serial blog on the internet. And then he was just all free. And then he turned it into this. So interesting story there.
All right. Thank you. Charles Anthony, can you unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yes, hi, thank you. I find this very, very interesting because I have friends who've published self-published books in the past, and they've done it with Amazon books, and they were sort of telling the same story about how they don't get as much money from it versus Apple Books. My question is, how do you get your covers designed? Do you design your book covers? Do you hire someone to do that? Does Apple Books provide that?
So Amazon now has a thing where you can use like their own little Canva, if you're familiar with that site Canva, where you design.
Yeah.
They're trying to make their own, but no. You know how you can normally tell some book looks self-published? It's because somebody thinks they can design a book cover. I know my talents, it's not that. I can do maybe a social media graphic, but no, I go through, there's several companies, and it's called Fresh Cover Designs. And she's pretty affordable. And I'll give her some ideas. And she'll even tell me right now, neon pink is trending in new adult romance. So that's where I'll use her expertise to change the color or stuff like that. Let me see. So Mine to Five, this one right here where they're holding hands, it's an office romance. So it kind of shows they're not supposed to. It's winter time because it takes place around the holidays and in New York City. So they're Central Park. I found that image. And I bought the rights to it on like the stock photo or wherever. And then I gave that to her. So this is the one I did the most design input on my own. And it actually won a few cover contests, which is kind of fun. And she even edited it. I'm like, she has red heels in it. She breaks a heel. And so I'm like, could you change it? So she even kind of edited the red to make her heel that color. So it's a dialogue, kind of like anything, but no, I hire professionals. And a lot of I have a friend and I that we text each other all the time about people's bad covers. We don't publish it anywhere, but it's like, you know, you can't judge a book by a cover. People do have expectations with what you said in it.
Great. Greg Purdom, can you please unmute yourself and ask your question? Greg, you're up. Thank you. If you're talking, Greg, we can't hear you. Greg's question is, who sets the prices for your books, Tara?
Okay. So if I was traditionally published, I'd have no say over that because I publish them myself. I set the prices. I'll usually do it cheaper in pre-order because if you get a lot of pre-orders, it automatically that day tells Amazon, whoa, 200 people just bought this book today. But meanwhile, you know, they bought it like 3 months ago. So pre-orders are very important for authors too. So that's how you can help people. But no, I set the prices. However, audiobooks, I do not. It's based on the length and how many narrators and how much they're going to divvy up the proceeds. So I can't control it. And so Audible sets it. I think, and no, it's interesting. People will buy it on Audible and it is way cheaper on Apple Books. So they do it cheaper. And then there's a site called Chirp. If you're a big audiobook fan, which I like because I like to multitask and get some reading done with commuting. It's a great way to quickly consume books too. Not that I still read as well. And it really helped my career because it brought my books to an audience that they wouldn't have probably read my book. They listened to it. So they said it, and Chirp gives deals on audiobooks. So I subscribe to that, and every day you can say you can get these 3 audiobooks for this price or not. And you pick what genre you're interested in. So what I get served and what you might get served would be very different for the audiobooks.
Okay. Frank, unmute yourself and ask a question. Say, Frank Salvatini.
Yes, yes, Tara, I'm really enjoying what you're doing here. But I'm wondering, as a person that used to write for comics, I'm wondering what your expenses are, as you kept saying that I had to hire this for that, I have to hire this for that. Does that side of it eat heavily into your profits?
Yes. Yes. I would say the first 2 books, first book I lost money. Second, I probably broke even. And now I'm finally at a point. So that's why it feels like you need more than one. You need that backlist. So now somebody happened to pick up one of my books, likes it. Now, hopefully they'll go back and buy others. And that helps me too. It also helps to always have a new book because of the Amazon algorithm. If you only do one and done, they know that, and they're never going to promote your book as a like these books, or if you enjoyed this, you'll enjoy that. They want to promote something that they know is going to give them more money eventually. So yes, I pay for a cover, pay for the images with the cover. I pay my editor because I do not want to put it out there. Even how many friends and everybody reads it, quality. That would kill me. I don't mind if they just didn't like, it wasn't their cup of tea, but if somebody says, poorly written or something like that, that would destroy me. So I pay for a real great editor, and she's super tough. She's this Russian woman. She lives in America, but she's very she never sugarcoats anything. I wouldn't mind a little sprinkling maybe once in a while, because after I read her book, I go depressed for a month. Read her edits before I dive back in and put on my big girl pants and make those changes. But once in the side notes, she finally, after my 3rd book, she wrote, "Ha." And I'm like, oh my gosh, that must be the best thing I ever written if I finally got a "ha" from her. And then the next day I was wondering, is it "huh"? So hopefully it was positive. So I pay for her, and she's expensive. Then I also pay for a final proofreader, because once she gives me all those developmental edits, it can look like a whole different book at that point. So then I have my proofreader, and she used to work for Disney, and she's awesome. She's almost 80, and she still does this on her spare time, as this is her career now, as freelance from home. So she's pretty awesome, Joyce. And I'm happy to give you any editors or the proofreaders' names if anybody wants contacts, or the cover artist.
And that was my next question. If you're starting out, how do you meet these people who help you create this book?
That's a great question. It was by me joining other writing groups and speaking with other authors, becoming those friends, poaching who they use, with it, asking for an introduction. You need to be around that, because my first editor I hired, there were so many mistakes that I ended up having to pay for that second one again, and the third. So definitely go by a recommendation. They'll sometimes do a sample edit. They'll edit the first 20 pages. You can see their style and what they like. So some will offer that, and that's helpful.
So it's possible that some editors can actually change maybe the flavor of your book.
Yes. They won't make the edits directly. Mm-hmm. It's the sidebar of notes that is scary in red, or, they'll say, I don't think you should do this, consider this. She seems aggressive here. There's feedback that, if you're in your head, you need to see. Especially nowadays, they're very good about pointing out PC issues that I might not have noticed or have seen. So that's also good, because, there was a big thing not too long ago in the romance industry where how people portrayed indigenous people, and she didn't mean any harm, but how did it get past the editors? And that was a traditionally published book. And that became a big uproar in our community.
Okay. Chris Klimmer, can you please unmute yourself and ask your question?
My question is, I write or help write specialized histories and research guides for family historians with very limited distribution. What advice can you offer for self-published nonfiction authors?
I think positioning themselves as an expert or some kind of in that field, where I can't really say I'm a romance expert or have any real knowledge, you know what I mean? Like, come on. I feel nonfiction does very well. Bookstores want those historians in to do a talk and chats. I would definitely reach out to any local bookstores, groups like this, anything for them to speak to. When I do it, it depends, you know, so thank you for being open to having me. It is not a field that so we romance is 55% of all mass market books and pays for all the money for the traditionally published, but we're kind of like the bastard stepchildren that they want to pretend does not exist.
All right, we're gonna.
So I would say yes. I would just promote your background more and try to do a lot of local opportunities, because people do want to meet that person and hear that. And hopefully that's helpful.
What about on the writing and editing end of it? As pro bono authors, we obviously are not hiring big name editors and proofreaders.
Right. I'm not sure about that. I wonder if there is some kind of quid pro helping. Do proceeds go to any charities or?
Actually, we donate our books to key repositories and the like,
Okay,
libraries.
that's nice. So I would always try to lead with that and see if this is something that they could do and you would promote them too.
Okay.
My last release went to all the proceeds are going to St. Jude's, but it was hard because I'm not legally allowed. You couldn't say it on Amazon. I couldn't put that proceeds because I guess they don't want to be liable. How if I don't give them the check at the end, you know? But it was in my own marketing that I promoted that. So maybe if any kind of social images or anything, if you mention the good that it does too.
Okay, we're gonna let you continue on with your slides, Tara.
Okay, so back to Vellum. So let's say you do have the story that you want to publish, and if it's just for your friends or if it's a career. I do all my writing originally in Word, and then once it's here, once I have the proofreading, I really love and play with this. So any future edits where somebody said, oh, or anything I want to change, something with the ebooks. So print, once it's print, it takes a long time for any new changes to come into effect if it was already a bunch were printed. Ebook, I can do within 24 hours, make an update. The only problem is not everybody hits the update on their Kindle if they already downloaded it. But sometimes I'll think of a really funny line and I'm like, oh my gosh, my character Ben should have said that 2 books ago. And I'll just put in a line once in a while like that. And I do it all. So once everything from here on out, all my books, I just edit and use in Vellum from there. So that's where that's like I told you, this is why I went to Mac, and it's so great. So I don't work for them. I'm not like pushing their price or anything. But yeah, so I have the full package. I can create unlimited ebooks and paperbacks just for that price. Now I've done it. Now that I own it, you can go in with a friend or 2 on it too, because some of the members of my Southwest Florida fiction writers group are older and they're not familiar with, they were always traditionally published, and now they got the rights back to their old books. And they're like, oh, we're going to update it. add cell phones and things and put it as an ebook. But that could be a big expense for them. I already own the software. They give me the file and I even just convert it for them. It's so easy. It's like 10 minutes of my time, thanks to this software. So if you don't ever plan to do print, it's cheaper. But maybe you can even go in with somebody for it. And it is cool. You can download it for free just to see and use it too. It's just when you go to hit convert to generate those files, it won't do that until you pay. All right, so that was pretty much it. So I really want to just be open to questions. It is daunting in a lot of ways, but it's easier too. I feel like some people are like, well, I can't, there's no way I can get it out there. I can self-publish it. You can. It's just pretty much creating those accounts, learning how Amazon versus Barnes and Noble versus iBooks. And some just do Amazon exclusive. If I did that, I'd actually make a few more percentage of the share in royalties. So I have one book that is Amazon only, so I can make a bigger commission, but otherwise I'm wide. That's what it's called, wide, to have it everywhere. Sorry, what's the name of the software?
Yeah,
There it is.
yeah. Mhm.
Oh, can I
Lin-
add- sorry, I'm reading it. Go ahead, Tina.
Yeah. Linda McNeil, can you please unmute yourself?
Yes, can you add graphics and videos for some interactive book?
I'm not sure about the video, actually. That's interesting. You can add graphics. You can add these things called wingdings too, like the things that separate each chapter and personalize it. For my holiday one, I have like a little, like a Christmas ball, which is kind of fun, like an ornament, which makes it a little unique. However, if you start doing too many graphics and you're doing a print book, your print price goes up. So I had one where I had a college map in it and the price changed for the print version for me.
But not for the ebook.
Not for the ebook.
Okay.
However, you just got to make sure the like file size is small too. It feels like if you get too big with graphics and the file size, that's when you get a charge too. But so far with Vellum, I think how they generate it, I've never had anything over 2 megabytes. So it's pretty great.
Thank you.
Question then, if someone just asked you about, could you put a video in your book? Have you ever used Pages to create a book? Because you can create an EPUB that will allow videos.
Yes.
Okay.
I've done that. It's just because mine is so much more word focused and not the
Mhm.
video. I do better having my editing tools not in Pages.
Okay.
I know children's book authors have used Pages because of this.
Mhm.
And they don't do the print and it's ebook only. I have started doing that with my children, even on Kindle Unlimited. I can get their nice graphic books for them right onto their iPads.
Excellent. Excellent. Okay. Do we have any more questions? Please. Mitch, go ahead. Unmute yourself.
Yes, I'm curious if you or some of your author friends dictate books.
Yes.
And if you do, what dictation methods or software do you use?
I know 2 of the members in my group swear by it. I will get you who they use. I do not use it. I type faster than I think, I feel. So that works well for me. But you know what? Let me follow up and I'll send that around to the dictation software. And I heard it's come a long way because years ago it wasn't. It was really meant for just like hearing impaired or like things like that. It's gotten really good. I will though, if I'm driving, I always have my notes page on my phone because things come to me and that I'll do a quick text to speech just so I have it. And then when I get home, added in.
Great. to know.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. All right, more questions, please, everyone. Lots of questions. Irene, can you please unmute yourself and ask your question? That's a good question. Irene Stetcher. Irene's question is, do you have to carry any kind of liability insurance?
I haven't had to encounter that. I have an LLC, so that does protect me a little bit and it makes it easier for taxes. And so that's in there. I go through a legal check of my copyright, and in it has the disclaimer, persons may or may not resemble real people. Like I have to say that, names are fictional, everything in here is fictional. So I do have that disclaimer. So I haven't had to worry about anything further. I did get I was plagiarized. So I did have that issue, and I did not have much recourse, unfortunately.
That's too bad.
Yeah.
When, and that's sort of where my next question was leading, because right now in the music industry, you have a lot of artists saying, well, you copied mine and that sounds so much like mine, and that's just half a note off. Do you have any problems with that?
Yes. So we all there's a lot of things that are basic tropes. So that's what we use, Cinderella, that kind of a story is a trope, or, the office romance is a trope. Those are different. So there's, it's hard to like reinvent the wheel. There's gonna be coincidences, but when
Right.
it's further, that's where, they took word for word and just changed character names for a beginning of their chapter. And they started the book in the same spot too.
Ouch.
Yes, and I have proof where she was a fellow author, and we had shared our work earlier to get each other's opinion.
Mhm.
And she also then published a month before me. So
Oh, I apologize for her.
I know.
That's terrible.
But
That's
lesson
terrible.
learned,
Yes, yes, yeah. More questions, please? Can you just raise your hand? We'll call on you and you can ask your question.
Can
Okay,
I ask a question?
I guess. Go ahead, George.
Okay. How long does a book live?
That's a good question. If I didn't have a new book at least once a year out, it probably died that year. Amazon would like authors to have a book out every 3 to 6 months for their algorithm. And I take pride in what I write. This last one is a novella, so that's a little different. I could at least get that out 6 to 9 months. But I'm not that. There's some authors that do it, and I just wonder what gets sacrificed along the way personally.
Great. How do you not crash and burn?
Right. Or how do you not get desperate and steal somebody's stuff like that? Or,
Mhm.
so.
So
Of course,
the
and you
average,
also have George Martin, who can't finish a book. Game of Thrones.
Yeah. Keep it going.
so the average romance novel will only last maybe a year.
Yeah.
Mm.
Okay.
Unless it's a series. So that I get so bored with things. I want to start a whole new thing. I would be more successful if I did series writing. People want to still live in that world that you created with new characters. These 2 new adult books that I was actually hired to do, these ebook only ones that were novellas, are a series. So since this book came out, the second book came out last week, it'll be interesting to see how many did it really help did people want to hear about the Friends story first?
I have a question from Liam, who doesn't have a microphone. So he wants to know the statistics of how much of the publishing world is romance books.
I will get it for you because I love telling people that. But yeah, we're the biggest mass for the mass market. We're over 55% last. Romance Writers of America has, sorry, there's my Amazon page. RWA romance book stats. They're amazing. So we sell the most, and Amazon doesn't love it either. Okay.
What's
about
up,
romance.
What do you mean Amazon doesn't love it?
It's so funny. They've made it very hard. They'll often call things erotica, which when they're not, and kind of hide the books based on covers. So there was a year or so ago where everybody had to change what it looked like, less bare chests and everything. So I don't know why they're the ones that felt like they should define it, but they did. Okay. So, okay. It's 23% overall, the US fiction market is romance. But then I was saying the paperback books is the 55 part. It is male 18%. I always think that's interesting too. Female 82 is what we'd expect. And a lot of people think like, only older people read romance. Back in the old days, it's that perception of like your grandmother read romance books, but she just knew where it was at. So the average reader is 35 to 39.
Okay.
And what has been interesting is the LGBTQ. That genre has really taken off. And I've been asked, would you write like a book like that? They're like dying for it. The editors and the publishers want more because it's been such a plethora of readers. However, I was like, well, I don't feel I'd be an accurate voice in that market.
Jean Goldberg, can you unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yes, Tara, I'd just like your opinion or advice, suggestions about pen names, nom de plumes, and would that give someone a little more license to perhaps describe actual events, maybe like sort of autobiographical fiction in terms of liability?
Yes. Okay. So that's interesting. Hindsight, I wouldn't have picked a T or an S because when they list me out, I'm always at the end of all the author lists, even when I'm at like signings or anything. However, Tara is my name. I am Tara Settembre. So it's the month of September in Italian. So nobody can usually spell it. There's no P, it's Settembre. So I just made it easier and changed it. I also walked down the aisles of the romance aisles, and there's not really many ethnic names. Robert, Steele, it's very simple and easy to spell. So I thought doing Tara Settembre would make sense. Also, it's different than my kid's last name. I kind of liked that it separated us more. And also I had already made a name for myself on the blogging side and in journalism as Settembre. So I didn't want my articles to come up when I want people to buy my book. So those are things you might want to consider.
John Lane, did you have a question? Your microphone.
Yes, I did actually.
Go ahead.
I've been thinking about writing a story of an autobiography, actually, and I was going to ask you, my question is, any advice on preparing for an autobiography? I'm trying to present my career right the way through from coming from, a ragged individual in the north of England to where I am today. And it's not like Angela's Ashes, anything like that, but that's what made me think about writing something like that. Any advice on that?
I think that sounds great. I'm glad, good for you to try it. I would say also join, so my group is a fiction group, so I'm not going to be as much help, but there is the FAPA, it's like the Florida Association of Writers. FAPA, F-A-P-A, sorry, I don't know exactly what the acronym is, published authors, maybe P-A.
FAPA. Yeah.
Yes.
Oh, okay.
And I'm telling you, joining these groups, and now, like, as you know, now that everything is on Zoom, I'm also a member of a group in California and elsewhere. Just hearing, so that we have monthly speakers, I'm sure they would have monthly speakers and topics that would be specific for you and writing autobiographical.
Oh, excellent. Well, I appreciate that. Thank you.
Of course.
And Tara, and comment about what you said about romance novels. I don't know if you read the article that Elon Musk's sister is trying to create a whole industry of that as well, because it's so there's so much interest in it, and that the male response was Fast and Furious movies, but that's not what people want to read about. So anyway, that's just my commentary. Do we have any more questions?
Yeah, I want to ask one other question.
Michael keeps waiting.
Is Amazon a monopoly at this point?
Oh, yes. Yes, I can't do they're the majority of the money, the majority of the sales. So when I said we sold 5,000 copies in a week, so you need that as a minimum, at least, to make the USA Today bestseller list, by the way, 5,000. But it can't just be Amazon. You need 500 Apple, at least a minimum of 500 on Apple Books, 500 on Nook. And I got 500 and 500. But that just shows you everybody else was Amazon. And I had to work to teach people that just use the app and download it for Apple Books.
Mhm.
Barnes and Noble really has a horrible website, but they're not trying to compete with Amazon. They do want their brick and mortar. But no, they're huge. For audiobooks, I wanted to not give them the exclusive Audible, because Amazon owns Audible, the number one. And so I did from one of them where I went wide with my audiobook, and I went from selling 500 copies to 70 the minute I didn't grant Amazon the exclusivity.
Interesting.
So you have to, in order to survive, you have to work with Amazon.
You have to.
Interesting. Michael,
Yes.
you're up. You're up.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I'd like to get the name of the Russian editor, and does she just specialize in the romance, or is she good for everything?
She's good for everything. Her name is Anya, Anya Kagan, and she's with Touchstone Editing. So if you just sadly Anya Touchstone Editing, she'd show up. And she's very good about, like I said, she'll give you her opinion. She also has a group in her, so she'll recommend certain genres to maybe her colleague instead.
Very good. Sounds like a good place to check with first.
Yes.
Okay.
And you could even do, like I said, ask for that sample edit.
Thank you very much.
All right. Tara, Liam wants to know, what's your writing schedule? How many hours per day do you write?
Well, because I'm in marketing release mode, I have not been writing this last month, gearing up for the release. And that is what is sad when you're not traditionally published, that I now have to put on this hat and like kind of stop my creativity flow. But normally it's 9 to 3 when my kids are in school. And then I can't seem to shut off my head. So again, when in bed, all of a sudden the laptop comes out and I'll get a few more things out. So I don't force it though. If there's a week where I'm not feeling it, I don't make myself, because that's the quality that comes out. It's if I'm making myself, it feels it. So that's something I've learned and gave myself grace on. I love flying and writing because I have no choice to disconnect and sit there for like, when I find out there's a 5-hour flight somewhere, I'm so excited. Like, I know I'm just gonna be there writing.
Mhm. Good, good to know.
When
All
you
right.
say marketing release mode, that doesn't, when you're in that mode, you cannot write.
I can't. I have okay, so for this last week, I had so many online appearances that, and there'd be 15 minutes on a Facebook takeover or something like that. So I was just bouncing everywhere on different time zones. And all of a sudden the publisher saying, we need 500, we need, 80 more people to buy iBooks, Apple Books, if you want a list. I'm like, so like, it was just this. And then they're like, have you posted to Facebook yet? Have you posted here? I just was like getting whipped. It was like marching orders. So no, I couldn't even think about writing something nice in that time.
Has Facebook been a success for you?
Yes. But Facebook's also like Amazon, the behemoth, like you have to, but they make it hard too for small businesses and brands because of their algorithm and boosting. But it does well. It's more the reader age group. I love Instagram, but I don't think it really sells my books. And same with TikTok. I started doing that because everyone said you have to. I get views, but that's it. I think the best thing for selling my books personally, besides having the readers that read it before, has been my newsletter. Those are people who like your stuff, want to engage. And I own those contacts, right? If Facebook leaves tomorrow, there goes everybody who was a follower of mine. I have no way to contact them.
So your newsletter is on Facebook?
No. My
No.
newsletter is just my email marketing, what I send to somebody once a month.
Okay, so you have a large mailing list of that
Yes.
newsletter?
Yes. So my biggest 2 goals ever will be buy my book, sign up for my newsletter. Those are my biggest things to then resell books.
What percentage of the people that buy your book sign up for your newsletter?
It's more the other way around. If they have my newsletter, they definitely buy my book. But no, it's hard. It's hard to get people to give up an email address. I found ways. I just started doing more like a bonus chapter. If you want to see what happens. So if somebody just read this last book, I have a tease at the end saying, if you'd like to read more about Emerson and Steele, I have a special bonus chapter when you sign up for my newsletter. And in this last week since release, I probably did get like 300 new signups. And that's a lot in a short time for me.
Nice.
When you start writing, when you started writing in the beginning, did you find your books were way too long?
Yes, I did so many mistakes. Long, useless. It's called info dumps. I did a lot of info dumps, but I'm like, people need to know this. And they're like, they don't need to know it on the first page, Tara. So it was, and then learning to get rid of those big paragraphs and mix it up with dialogue. So letting my characters tell their backstory, letting my characters say that, my mother died last year, instead of saying his mother died in this tragedy, so, and it keeps the momentum moving.
So
So
then, I'm sorry, George, with that in mind,
go
does that regulate the size of your books that you create?
Yes. I write, so to be a minimum of a novel is 40,000 words. My biggest has been only 50,000. The bigger, the older school books, are way more than that. So, and my recent 2 novellas are 30,000 words. So a novella to a novel is not a huge, big amount of page differences, but to be a crisp, people seem to like I have a lot of banter and crisp, pithy dialogue. So mine tend not to be as long. And I'm not writing suspense. There's romantic suspense. There's going to be a lot more twists and turns and details in those books.
George?
So when this bonus chapter thing is interesting.
Mhm.
So does that seem to work?
It has. So that's what I learned from being in a seminar on Zoom back in March. So that was what the author planted in my head, saying she does a bonus chapter or an epilogue for every one of her books to hook and grab their email. So I was like, oh gosh, more work. Okay, let me do it. But I did, and it seems to be doing well. And now maybe I'm going to have to do that with everyone too, every release.
Do you try to link your books at all?
Yes. So Don't Start Now is a vacation romance, and it's set in Naples. My first ever short story, which was traditionally published with a bunch of other Florida authors, was set in Naples. I have that realtor in it appear in Don't Start Now. It's kind of like little Easter eggs. If you know it, you know it. Otherwise, not especially. So except for these recent two, I linked. And in that bonus chapter, you bet I mentioned the friends of the other in the other books, because I want them not only to sign up, to keep buying.
So to get someone started with this, would you recommend that they take creative writing classes?
Yes. So I always took it in school, but I would say you'd want a critique group. You can get with 3 other authors that are always, you just share each other. This is my recent chapter. We used to meet in Panera and redline each other's stuff. And so a critique group was very helpful. That's where I realized early on the mistakes that I was doing. And just joining all those groups and attending as much information like this. It feels like I've gone to college again the last 7 years in a fake degree that I've made up here with self-publishing by grabbing all these resources that are now available for you.
Good to know. Michael, do you have an additional question?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Okay, you can hear me. Good. Before the show even started, I asked the question, why do you want to write? Why do you want to write it or publish? And the meaning I had there was, I believe it's the story that counts, because I think there are millions and millions of people that can actually publish about 1 million times better than I ever could in my life. And it seems like, and I don't have a passion to be a publisher or somebody that writes the story and not, or publishes. I think the story is everything. I don't know if you agree with that or not, but that was my feeling. But I really appreciate this information. It was very, very enlightening, and I thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Okay.
I do write because I can't not write. If I
I
don't put
understand
that out, if I don't put it out, I'm going to be up all night with these characters in my head. I usually start with just something like a meet cute or something that I think is funny. And from there, I think, how would I build a whole story around it?
And that's a good lead into Jean's question. Jean, can you unmute yourself and ask a question?
Yeah, that's interesting. Tara, I just was wondering, perhaps your strategy varies from novel to novel, but I was wondering if oftentimes you find it perhaps good to generate just a draft outline of your plot up front, or do you let the story develop organically through your characters as you develop them further? Can you comment on your strategies?
Yes. So in the beginning, coming from maybe the journalism background and where you have to share your notes and everything, I was very much more plotting oriented, but I felt like it stifled my creativity. So writers, you're either a plotter or a pantser. And I'm now a pantser. I write off the seat of my pants. So literally, I know the things that I have to hit. How do they meet? What's keeping them apart? How are they going to resolve it? Right. And then what colorful characters, what setting, all that comes in. So I know what I have to hit, but I've been giving it way more freedom. Okay. So in my recent one, I was it was a college romance story. Good girl, bad boy. and I was ready writing this. I had a whole plan in my head. And then I met with the girl's majoring in science. So I met with a professor of biology just to ask some questions, because as an English major, I knew nothing about science. And she told me about, in her class, one of her students found out her father wasn't her father based on their talk about blood types. So the teacher felt terrible knowing she's like revealed this secret, but I was like, oh my gosh, that is going into my book, and that explains so much why he doesn't like his father, or is angry and trying to figure out who he is. So if I had stuck with my plot, I wouldn't have been able to put in that really cool element. In my first book, it kind of developed like that, but based on the editing, when you need something else here, and all of a sudden I just found my characters. It is weird to say, because I used to hear authors say that, but literally my characters guided me in a different way than I was going to take it.
Excellent. Very excellent. Well, we just have 1 minute left. Is there anything else that you'd like to share with us, Tara?
Oh my gosh, I think I shared a lot.
Yes, you have.
Sorry, it's all on
But
me.
there's always more. There's always more.
Well, I hope it was something interesting or helpful.
Absolutely.
Every journey is
absolutely.
different. Everyone's author's journey is different, but if you want to write, I say write, and you don't need the editor or the agent. You have this ability to do this. So that is what I would say and encourage you to try.
Yes, and thank you so much. It was a wealth of information.
Mhm.
Thank you
Very
very
much so. All right, it is let's say 12:45, and Dan, all yours.
All right. Thank you once again, Tara. If you'd like more information, you can contact the Southwest Florida Fiction Writers Group, which Tara is the president of, and that's at Southwest Florida's fictionwriters.com. Just Google it. She also has a couple of her books available in the Collier and Lee libraries, and they can be purchased in print, audiobooks, ebooks, as she said. And I just added this note in here, hearing it from Tara. If you want to support your authors, the best way, buy ebooks. Unless you like to have that in the library, then buy the ebook and the hard copy, so you have it in your library. So again, thank you, Tara. And if everyone could say thanks.
Yeah, unmute your microphones and give Tara a giant thank you.
Thanks for your time.
Thank you.
Really
you.
Excellent. Excellent.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you
all.
very much.
Well done.
All right. So next week, what we are going to be looking at, as soon as my fireworks finish there.
All right.
Oh, you're not
If-
seeing that.
No,
Next
we
week-
can't.
Yep.
If
Let me grab
you
that.
wanted to say that, Dan, otherwise
There we are. So next week, we're going to have the Apple meeting recap, and this is with Mitch Briers. What he is going to take a look at is what Apple announced last week, which is going to include the new iPhones and the Apple Watch. I also want to mention one more time, there's a free invitation for the Suffolk's user groups. Just let Mike Wozniak know if you'd like to attend that. And thank you for your support, everyone, and we'll see you next week.